Hello and welcome to Unspooled. I am your host, Isaac Coate. Today, better late than never, I guess, in my second half of June 2018 roundup of everything I watched in the second half of June this year. So I've only got, I think, 14 movies to talk about. I took a little light. If you do not bother to read the description or do not care to, if you're like me and it takes too long to do so, then here are all the movies I'm going to review and talk about. So if you're wary of spoilers for any of the following films, be warned. He's talking about Justice League versus Teen Titans, The Incredibles, All the Money in the World, Ocean's 8, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Batman Under the Red Hood, Midnight Sun, 12 Strong, The Hurricane Heist, Justice League War, American Animals, I Can Only Imagine, The Strangers Pray at Night, and The Greatest Showman. So that is everything I'm going to talk about tonight. So you are aware of spoilers or are being wary of spoilers for any of those, do look out for that. We'll put that on the floor. Justice League versus Teen Titans. This came out in 2016. This is another DC animated movie. I'm trying to watch a lot of, if not all of those, if I can. I enjoyed this one. I enjoy pretty much all the DC animated stuff. They're always pretty good, by and large. There's some that I don't like as much as others, but this one I enjoyed quite a bit. Damian Wayne is not misbehaving as Robin, so Bruce sends him to the Teen Titans to go work with the Teen Titans to learn how to be a member of a cohesive team and all that kind of shit, So it's about, teamwork and friendship and all that kind of shit. And I enjoyed it. You get the return of Ra's al Ghul for a little bit, which was surprising. And I really enjoyed the villain, who's Raven, I think, the girl on the Teen Titans who can do magic and shit. Not the old woman who runs the group, but the kid that has all these magic powers. I think Raven, right? So we meet her father, who's who's a demon and stuff. So it's a fun adventure. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The Incredibles is the first one from 2004, not Incredibles 2. Haven't gone to the theater for it yet. So the first Incredibles, it was okay. Maybe I missed something, or I just didn't get it, but I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, though. That's the thing. I expected, from what I heard from everyone about it, that I was going to just absolutely adore this movie, and I didn't care for it. It's a superhero film, but it's my least favorite kind of superhero film, where it's the superheroes, superhumans of any ilk can't use their powers for whatever reasons, right? And then they have to figure out a way to stop this ultimate villain to restore their usage of powers or whatever, and then it just devolves into pretty standard superhero action fare. And, it might just be that I'm spoiled with all of the MCU movies and all the DC animated movies that are this same kind of shit, but done better and more thoughtfully most of the time. Marvel, not so much, but the DC animated for certain, where it's, you know, it's this same kind of stuff. It's just generic superhero fun, which, you know, is only good for so long and is only interesting for so long. And I'm kind of at the point where these kind of stories, unless there's something deeper to them, in like, you know, like the Nolan Bat trilogy, or like Black Panther had, or like at least half of the DC animated stuff has, or like Cap Civil War, or even Infinity War to an extent, that has these kind of deeper things going into it, and not just pure, okay, let's have fun and see these superheroes defeat this villain with, you know, their fun powers and stuff. Like, I've seen that done so much at this point that it's just not fun and it's not interesting any longer. The next movie I have to talk about, good God, I hated this. All the Money in the World. This came out last year. I was excited for this one. This was the other movie Ridley Scott did last year, of course, made Alien Covenant as well, which I quite enjoyed Alien Covenant. This one, God, I don't know. This is a kidnapping movie about some rich guy's grandson or nephew or something is kidnapped, and so the kidnappers demand a lot of money. Like I've seen kidnapping movies before. This is the same fucking thing. It's not interesting. It's not anything different. It's just the same old cliche kidnap shit over and over. And it's like 2.5 hours, which is way too long. And I despised this thing. I didn't even finish the movie. I think I watched the first hour and a half, and I said, and I like pulled up the info on the Blu-ray player, like how much, an hour left. Fuck that. No, fuck that. So I do not watch All the Money in the World. I did not like it at all. Ocean's 8, which came out this year. God. Here's the thing with Ocean's 8. These are not my kind of movies. The Ocean's movies aren't my kind of movie. Like the serious heist movie is not my kind of thing. You know, a movie we'll talk about later, like American Animals or like Logan Lucky from last year, that are kind of, or even Going in Style even from last year, which are kind of more fun, silly, comedic heist films. That's my kind of heist movie. Even though I don't care for heist movies much in general, those are much more my speed than the Ocean's movies are. And this one, I like the idea of it, right? This all-female cast, you know, at least for 90% of the main players in the film, you know, being all female and it being the kind of same thing, but with that twist to it. I like that idea. You know, I think it's a good idea. I think it worked. It worked well. That part of the movie worked well, you know, in this one, and even in Ghostbusters a couple of years ago, the female twist of it worked well enough. It was just other issues brought down Ghostbusters and brought this movie down even further. This is really the second time we've seen this kind of an attempt at this all-female cast reboot thing. And, you know, both times it hasn't worked commercially, and I don't think it's worked on a film level for different reasons, none of them pertaining to the cast. You know, that Ghostbusters movie I actually thought was fine. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was at least in line with the originals. I thought it was right in line. You know, it was a fine movie. Ocean's 8, I'm interested to see what they're going to try to do next in this kind of line of female led reboots. I'm interested to see what property they're going to pull out next to try to do this to. You know, so I don't know what it'd be, but I'm interested to see what they're going to try to pull out, because both times it hasn't worked. I guess I'm realized now I haven't really talked much about Ocean's 8. So it's, if you've seen the other Ocean movie, you've seen this. It's, and even if you haven't, this movie, at least for me, was aggressively boring. Like, I was bored out of my mind watching this movie in the theater. Like, this was maybe the closest. No, I take that back. I was going to say this is maybe the closest I've come to actually falling asleep at a movie this year. That's not true, because I was actually falling asleep during Ready Player One, and I was nearly there during the Han Solo movie. I was almost asleep during those. This one was getting me there, but it didn't pull it off fully to get me there, luckily. So I'll at least give it that. It didn't put me to sleep nearly. But like the whole point of these movies, at least in my mind, is that the heist part is supposed to be like really fun, and it's supposed to be a lot of fun to see them plan it and then pull off the heist, right? That's supposed to be the fun of these movies in theory, right? This heist was not particularly fun. It wasn't really fun to see them plan it. There was a lot of shit that I think they were trying to connect to the other Ocean's movies that I just did not understand. You know, maybe I'm not, you know, which is just probably due to the fact that I don't give a fuck about the other movies. But I didn't care for the heist. I didn't find it fun. I didn't find it entertaining. I was just so bored with this movie that, like, the cast is all fine. There's no issue there. The cast is fine. The directing, it looks fine. It makes sense. It's cohesive. It all works. It's just aggressively boring. Up next, Monty Python and the Holy Grail from 1975. I finally have gotten to watch more stuff that isn't exclusively from last year or this year. I've gotten to branch out into more, what kind of shit do I want to be watching? Well, so I pulled Monty Python here to watch. I had not seen this one before. And I liked this one a lot. Very funny. The comedy's aged very well. That's the biggest issue with these kind of movies, with comedies of any era, any time period, is will they age well? Does the comedy hold up? Is it still funny, or is it stupid now? Is it woefully offensive? Is it just bad? You know, those are always the issues with comedies, particularly of any time period. Like, I almost guarantee a movie like Girls Trip from last year, which I enjoyed, but that a movie like that in 20 years might not hold up well at all. It might, I don't know, but it might not hold up well at all in 20 years from now. But Monty Python, this one, Holy Grail, holds up very well, is still very funny. And, you know, the story is pretty dumb, but, you know, it's Monty Python. That's part of the joke, is that the story is so absurdly stupid. That's part of the joke. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Up next, Batman Under the Red Hood from 2010. This is another DC animated, of course. No, I got one more later. I loved this one. This is a great story. The story of Red Hood is a great one. There was, you know, the long running rule in comics. There was basically like there was a well known rule of comics that there are 3 people who are always dead, who always die and never come back. Jason Todd, who's the second Robin, Uncle Ben, you know, in Spider-Man, and Mary Jane in Spider-Man as well. That was the traditional rule, that those 3 characters, anytime we have them in a story, they have to die. They can never come back. They can never return from the dead either. Obviously, 2 of those 3 have in various stories. You know, Mary Jane, fucking One More Day. Fucking hell. Then obviously Jason Todd with different stories. Red Hood's the good one, and then he does come back in the Arkham continuity, the Arkham game continuity, as Arkham Knight, in literally just a giant Red Hood ripoff. It's literally the same fucking story, just done with a different name. But yeah, so, and I liked the way it's that they change why Jason Todd, or how Jason Todd is brought back in the movie here. Because in the comic version of this story, it's basically it's kind of silly in that it's oh god, how exactly does this go? So the Joker blows up Jason. Jason is buried, but because Bruce was either in such emotional trauma or just didn't feel the need to, he didn't perform an autopsy on Jason. And the thing is that Jason had somehow, I forget how, but he had not actually been dead or something like that, and he escaped. And so he lived and then came back to fight Batman because he was pissed off at Bruce for not saving him, basically. In this movie adaptation, it's very different than that. So the premise in the movie version is that Ra's al Ghul, you know, he uses the Lazarus Pit to rejuvenate his body to stay alive, as he's basically immortal, right? So he, after seeing Batman, you know, that he dies, and then Jason Todd dies, and Ra's kind of, because Bruce has been raising, or is this, no, this is before Damian Wayne, sorry. So as kind of repayment to Bruce for helping Ra's with his many different things, Ra's decided to try to reanimate, to bring Jason Todd back to life using the Lazarus Pit. And Ra's dug up Jason Todd's corpse and put him in the Lazarus Pit, and it kind of worked. It brought Jason Todd back from the dead, but Jason was kind of fucked up mentally from it. And in this adaptation, Jason Todd's motivation isn't a I'm pissed at Bruce for not saving me. It's I'm pissed off at Bruce for still refusing to kill, especially for still refusing to kill the Joker, even after the Joker brutally murdered me, that Bruce still wouldn't kill the Joker. And that's the crux of this movie, is that core philosophy of Batman of I will not directly kill anyone. I may indirectly on occasion, but I'm not going to directly kill someone. And it's put to the ultimate test in this movie, and it works so fucking great. And I thoroughly loved this movie. Maybe my favorite animated Batman tale so far. Absolutely adored it. So now I got quite a few things from this year. Midnight Sun. This is one of those house every day because she has to stay in her house because she has, like, she can't go out in the sunlight. That's the thing. It's one of those. It's very standard. It's nothing interesting. I didn't particularly care for it, but this isn't my kind of movie. So if you're into sappy teen rom-coms and that kind of shit, like if you liked Fault in Our Stars, this is right up your alley. If you like that kind of stuff, you'll probably like this a lot more than I did. But I mean, I'll recommend it if you're into this kind of movie, but if you're not, this is not something that's gonna get you into it. No, I will admit though, Patrick Schwarzenegger, I think Arnold's son or grandson, I'm guessing son, he's not bad to look at, but there's no reason to watch this movie for just that though. All right, up next, 12 Strong. From this year. This is Thor. Thor is a soldier in this movie. Yeah, Chris Hemsworth is playing a soldier of some kind. I don't know. I didn't like this movie either. It's one of those, American military movies of, oh, we got to go to Middle Eastern country and fuck some shit up because they did something to us. It's one of those movies. And I just can't even feign enough patriotism or interest in this kind of a topic to care about these kind of fucking movies. Like, I don't care for this. If you like war movies and this kind of stuff, you'll probably love this thing. It's got a lot of explosions, a lot of brown people getting shot. Now, I will admit you might not like that the Middle Eastern folks, the Afghanis or the Iranians, I forget exactly where they are in this movie, but some country in that region, that they're kind of the protagonists. They're painted, at least a sect of them are painted as sympathetic protagonists, as sympathetic heroic figures. So, some people won't like that because they're fucking, but I at least liked that nice twist on this kind of a story, but I still don't care about this kind of shit. But it's a fine movie. I don't like them at all, but it's a fine movie. The Hurricane Heist, also from this year. This was fucking hilarious. I know that wasn't the intent, but God, this was hilarious. Or maybe it was the intent. I don't know. I really don't know at this point with some of these movies, if they're trying to be over the top silly or not. This was hilarious. I loved this movie. I highly recommend The Hurricane Heist if you're into bad movies, if you like stupid, silly, inane movies. This is your kind of shit. You'll love this, I think. Now, I will admit it is a little the moments of pure hilarity and pure insanity are a bit too far removed from each other. There's maybe like 10 to 12 great moments in this movie, and there's a lot of time where you're gonna be bored probably, but those absolutely hilarious moments are so worth it. This movie is so great to watch. in like a Mystery Science Theater and a Riff Tracks type of setting, this is perfect for that. I highly recommend it if you're into doing that kind of thing at home or whatnot. I highly recommend this movie for that. It's absolutely hilarious. It's not a good movie by any stretch of the word. It's a bad movie, don't get me wrong, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Up next, Justice League War from 2014. I enjoyed this one. This is the origin of the Justice League as done in New 52 continuity. So, you know, take that for what you will. But I liked it. It's a nice origin for the Justice League. And that's really all there is to it. I quite enjoyed it, and I found it to be very entertaining. All right, we'll finish this episode out. American Animals from this year. This was actually really good. I didn't think I was going to like it because it's a heist movie, and I figured it was going to be a serious one. It's not. It's kind of a dual portrayal of this heist, because it's apparently adapted from the story of a real life heist that some people tried to pull off at their like local college or whatever. So it's partially a dramatization of that, plus it's a documentary at the same time with the real people in here talking about this event and kind of what it meant to them and why they did it and that kind of shit. And I loved this. I was thoroughly entertained. I found it to be a lot more insightful and thoughtful than it should have been for this kind of movie. It was way too smart for this kind of movie. And I loved that. I thought it was great. Thought it was very funny. Barry Keoghan is on a fucking roll, guys. Barry Keoghan is just on a roll between Dunkirk, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and this. He is on a roll right now, folks. He was great in this. I don't remember his name, but the other main lead guy in this movie, who is he's the guy who leads the cult in American Horror Story season 7, the most recent season of American Horror Story. He's the guy who leads the cult in that one. It's the same. It's that actor. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's in this. He's the other main lead. He's good here too. It has its comedic moments, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. I highly recommend American Animals. Another movie surprised me a lot that I actually liked this movie from this year. I Can Only Imagine. Now, I figured I wasn't going to care for this movie. I didn't see it in the theater because I was like, this is not the kind of movie that interests me. Because, you know, the way it's sold is that it's this movie about this Christian band and their big hit song or whatever, right? And the story behind that song. I was like, oh, God, this is going to be really fucking boring. This is going to be really stupid, and I'm going to go see this in the theater. I'm not going to go pay money to go see this movie. No. So I waited, and it was at my library, at the local library, and I was like, all right, fuck it, it's free, so sure, I'll check it out. I know a lot of people saw it, and some people even told me it was actually really good for a Christian movie. And so I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I don't like religious movies of any kind, but, okay, it's not a Pure Flix movie, so it has a chance. It could not be utter insane bullshit. So I'll try it, but the moment it gets preachy, I'm turning it off. And it never did until the very, very end, when they go to the actual members of this band or whatever singing this song at some ceremony or something, and I don't know about, oh, the power of Jesus, man, and shit. And it's like, okay. So they made it until the ending credit roll before they got preachy. So that's a great accomplishment for a quote-unquote religious film. Very impressive. So this is my kind of religious movie where the religion part, the Christian elements aren't terribly important to the story, aren't overly like bashing you over the head with this is God's will, follow Christ or whatever, you know. It's not doing any of that kind of stuff, which was very refreshing for this kind of movie. And it was really just more about how music can be a powerful coping mechanism for emotional trauma or emotional distress or what have you. And I quite enjoyed this movie. It wasn't emotionally moving like I thought it was going to be. At least not for me, it wasn't. But I actually recommend I Can Only Imagine. Not only is a Christian movie, because it's a goddamn masterpiece for a Christian movie, but just as a movie in general, it's a good movie in general. I quite enjoyed it. Now, obviously, I'd never heard of this song or this band or anything like that before. I'm not going to ever look them up again, but you know, so like when the movie opened, I think the opening, it claims like this is the biggest selling Christian song of all time. Maybe that's the ending, I forget, but I know it says that at some point. I was like, yeah, fucking right. Yeah, I know this song. This is one of the best selling songs of all time. Okay, sure. And then like, yeah, okay, I've never heard this song. Okay, sure, whatever. But it was honestly, I liked the song in the movie. I thought it was okay. You know, it was my kind of gospel music. Like, I'm not opposed to gospel music. You know, I love Bob Dylan's gospel records. I love like Leonard Cohen when he does gospel stuff is really fucking great. But so, you know, this is like Aretha Franklin's gospel stuff is the kind of gospel stuff I can get into, because it's not really about God or about you know, Christian stuff. Not really. That's not really, at least that's not the appeal of it for me. You know, it's not a philosophically appealing topic. But anyway, I Can Only Imagine. I recommend it. It's actually pretty good. And now, a couple movies that are not any good. The Strangers, Pray at Night from this year. Why the fuck was this movie made? That's my question. Why the hell is this made? Was this made? Like, as a generic slasher, like, why is this classified as a sequel to The Strangers? Like, besides, you know, the strangers en masse killing people, this has like hardly anything to do with The Strangers. It's like, for a very generic slasher movie, it's fine. It looks nice. I don't know his name, but the main lead guy, the teenaged brother, is nice to look at as well. I'll admit that. He held my attention visually for a while. And in a different way, but that's not important. So the movie looks nice, you know, beyond that, beyond a cast member, it looks nice. It's the cinematography in this thing's really nice. It looks really good. There's this one set piece that's at like the neighborhood pool house or something like that, that is like that is a great set piece. It looks fucking incredible. So that's a great set piece. But the movie as a whole is just one generic slasher film trope after another. There's nothing interesting about it. There's a long section of this that is really boring, and I think in the short review, I think I even said this movie felt way too long, even though it's only like 80 minutes. It feels way too long. Like this movie would work really well as like a 30-minute short or something. This movie would work really well if you kind of just set up the family going to this lake or whatever for the weekend or whatever. And then the strangers break in, and then we get the pool house set piece, and then the end. Like that would this movie is like a 30-minute short would work. But as a nearly 90-minute feature, it feels way too long, drags way too much, and is not remotely interesting or entertaining or even particularly fun. And the kills aren't fun. It's not scary. It looks really nice. I'll give them that. The cinematographer, whoever the DP on Strangers Pray at Night is, you did a great job, person. You did a great job. The final movie, another movie I did not care for, The Greatest Showman from last year. Good God. I did not like The Greatest Showman in the slightest. Oh boy. So the songs, let's start there because this is a musical. So the songs, okay, let's start there. The songs by themselves are fine. They work, they sound nice. They're a bit generic pop tuney, but they work. Okay? In a vacuum, they work. The problem is the movie they're in, it don't work at all. That's the main issue. There are many other issues I have with this movie that we'll get into. But that is my main issue that is the biggest issue with this movie to me, is the songs don't really fit well. Because as I said, they're very generic modern pop tunes. So it's all, you know, drum machine, big synth lines, stuff like this. Okay? Here's the problem. This movie is set in like what, the 1890s or something like that, right? Like the late early 1900s. That's when this is set, right? So there's the core problem. You have music that could not have been made. The sounds that are being made, and I'm supposed to believe are diegetic to all of these scenes, is being made and sounds like stuff that could not possibly have been made, I'd say, earlier than 2007, 6 maybe, if even then. And I'm supposed to believe that the people in 1890 or whatever are making this music. That is not possible. Like, it just doesn't logically work at all, which is a major problem in your musical. If the music doesn't make any logical sense in your movie, as far as how is it possibly in there, unless it's just all stuff in the people's heads, does it work? If you do it that way, where all of these song numbers, all of the music is non-diegetic to the scenes that it's in, this could work and would be much better than it is. But they clearly established that all of the music that I am hearing in this movie, that is the musicals, that is the songs, not the score work, but the actual songs, is diegetic to the scene, is playing key plot points, is being played in the scenes, is being played to the audience in the circus building, is the characters singing to each other, that kind of stuff. if you're going to clearly establish that, which this movie does in its opening seconds, establish that, then you have to make your music fit the instruments available in the time period. It doesn't have to all sound like 1890s music or whatever. You know, you can make a musical set in the 70s without making everything a disco song. You can do it. It's fine as long as you're doing stuff that conceivably could have been played in the 70s, which there's a wide array of stuff that you could reasonably say, yeah, this could have been played in the 70s, you know. A Kanye West song is not the answer there. And that's essentially what you have here. You have essentially like a fucking like, I don't even know who a modern pop singer is. Like you basically have like a Britney Spears song being made in like 1890 or something. That's essentially what all of these are, like Britney Spears songs being played in like the 1900s. Like it doesn't make any sense. The other issues, the characters are nearly non-existent in this movie. Like that's the one thing I was hoping was going to happen in this movie, is that like this is a movie that presumably is about the celebration of people of all sizes, shapes, colors, physical abilities, physical limitations, whatever, what have you, right? But here's the problem with that. That's a great idea. That is a wonderful idea. The problem is this movie doesn't know how to execute it, because it's like none of the people that have any actual body differences have names. Like, I think the bearded woman has a name, but I could not for the life of me tell you what it was. And I don't think any of the others are actually named beyond like the black chick, who we'll get into her in a minute. Like, so the only people that are actually named in this story basically are Hugh Jackman, his wife, his wife's parents, Zac Efron, and the black girl. And maybe the bearded woman, maybe. But no one else is named or given any kind of character beyond their physical abnormality. Which, if you're going to make a movie that is purportedly about accepting people of different physical appearances, and accepting people regardless of said physical appearances or physical differences, then the characters that have those differences or differing appearances should be A, important to the story, which I could argue they are not important to this story. Should be A, important to the story, which I don't really think they were in this movie, and B, should at least have names, if not actual fucking character arcs, which none of them do in this movie other than the black girl. No one other than her and Efron and maybe Hugh Jackman and his wife have character arcs. That is the biggest issue with this movie. None of the people that this movie is purportedly about celebrating and bringing to the forefront of our society and accepting them as members, right? This movie can't even bring itself to really acknowledge their existence beyond, here, this is weird, look at this. That's essentially what the movie's doing for its whole runtime when they're on screen is, hey, these people, hey, this looks weird. Look at this, audience. Look at this. Like, that's essentially all the movie does, which is a big problem. Oh, God. I really didn't understand half of the plot points in this movie. Like, the opera singer thing. What the fuck was that? I really didn't understand that. there was like this big fight scene where I know, like, as soon as it started, granted, this may have just been because it was a bit late in the movie, so I was half paying attention at this point because I was so done with this movie at that point. Like, then all of a sudden this giant fight breaks out. It's like, what the fuck is going on in here? What the fuck is going on in this movie? Like, I didn't get it. I didn't care for it. And honestly, I think this movie is... this isn't like Ready Player One levels of actively evil as far as movies go. Like, Ready Player One is like an actively evil film, which we can talk about a different day, but that is an actively evil movie. Like, this one isn't that level of pure evil and pure... I don't have that level of pure contempt for this. This isn't that level of troubling that Ready Player One is. But this is still a very troubling film that I really can't recommend watching the movie. If you like just want to listen to the soundtrack or maybe buy the soundtrack, I can wholeheartedly recommend that. The songs here are good. I did like the songs, but again, they made no sense in the movie. But I can recommend the actual songs, and I can recommend the soundtrack. I can't recommend that you ever actually watch this movie because it's fucking terrible and is just so problematic on so many levels. So that's The Greatest Showman. A hunk of shit with some good songs on top. And I think I've said this before, that maybe this wasn't this channel, maybe that was over on the Glide, but maybe that was over on the Glide show, not on this, but like, I'm a sucker for a terrible musical. You know, like, I wholeheartedly enjoy Grease 2 because of how terrible it is. But here's the thing, that and like other musicals that are awful but kind of fun, like Xanadu is terrible but really fun. Grease 2, Don't Stop the Music, that's the Village People movie. That thing is so fun, but it's so awful. Staying Alive, I think is the title, the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. That's a lot of fun, although it's a terrible movie. It's a lot of fun. Like, The Greatest Showman is a terrible movie, but it's not even, like, fun. Like, it's not even terribly fun or anything. It's just flat out terrible with some really nice and wasted songs on it. Like, I don't know how they got, because these are the, because I looked it up because it sounded very familiar. Like, almost when the first song started, I was like, this sounds very lyrically familiar. I know this style of writing, so I looked it up, and yeah, the guys who wrote La La Land, these are the same songwriters doing Greatest Showman. And like, you can tell because the songs are fucking incredible, but the rest of it is so bad. I cannot recommend enough the soundtrack for Greatest Showman. I cannot warn you enough to stay away from the movie of The Greatest Showman. That will do it for this episode of Unspooled. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more great content like this. And until the next episode, goodbye.